on this Saturday. That was from last hour. In the meantime here, we're a little past the bottom of the hour. I'm Andrew Kraft. Thanks for being with you on this Saturday. In the meantime, let's move now from New York City to Los Angeles. A live picture there over the Santa Monica Pier. Well, just yesterday, Erik and Lyle Menendez's resentencing hearings can now continue. This is despite, of course, opposition from the LA County District Attorney's Office. That was all according to a judge's ruling just yesterday. Well, our colleagues at Fox 11 in Los Angeles, including reporter Christina Gonzalez, well, she was there. This is her report.
It was nice to see the judge ruled fairly, thoughtfully, heard arguments.
The family of Erik and Lyle Menendez expressed their gratitude to the LA County judge who ruled that the brothers' resentencing hearing will proceed as scheduled.
The court made clear that this process isn't about politics. It's about truth. It's about justice.
Friday's hearing was supposed to last only a few hours. Instead, it took all day.
Describe the roller coaster that took place in court today.
I mean, it was wild. Anybody who was in there would tell you.
The courtroom was packed with the Menendez brothers' family and supporters, including actor Cooper Koch, who portrayed Erik in the Netflix series about the infamous Beverly Hills murders. Outside, a crush of cameras and journalists, while some sympathizers rallied for the brothers' release.
Will the judge free the Menendez brothers? Will the judge free the Menendez brothers?
District Attorney Nathan Hochman was also present inside as prosecutors displayed graphic photos from the 1989 murders of Jose and Kitty Menendez, a move that deeply upset the family.
You know, yet again, we were re-traumatized by this district attorney's office. Again, third time in a couple of months. So that's hard. That's hard.
Back in February, Hochman held a news conference announcing his opposition to a resentencing hearing for Erik and Lyle, calling both of them liars.
Lies and deceit and fabricating stories.
The fact that the entire focus of this DA was on something that happened, the crime 35 years ago, and that is not the focus of what this should have been. The 35 years since is what it should have been, and that's what the law says, and they just didn't want to follow the law.
And that is exactly what the family is planning to tell the court during the resentencing hearing next week.
We get to talk about who they are as people. We get to talk about their growth. We get to talk about their expressions of remorse and their rehabilitation.
The resentencing hearing has been scheduled for next week, April 17th and 18th. Reporting from Van Nuys, I'm Gina Silva, Fox 11 News.
Gina, thanks so much. Our colleague as well at Fox 11, Christina Gonzalez, also been following that story for well over 30 years. In the meantime, we want to bring into the conversation right now the District Attorney in Los Angeles himself, Nathan Hochman. He joins me on this Saturday. DA Hochman, thanks for being with us here. There was a lot in there in that report and in the hearing from yesterday. I have to ask now, though, what is your strategy and your office's strategy going forward after what is being described as a loss for your office yesterday?
So we fully intended for there to be a resentencing hearing because there was two paths to get there. The court had initiated its own motion to get a resentencing hearing, and we actually said that we do not oppose that and look forward to having the resentencing hearing on the court's own motion. What we actually opposed was the prior DA's motion because it completely failed to account for what we said was one of the key parts of rehabilitation. That's whether or not someone has completely accepted responsibility for the full breadth of their criminal conduct. In the Menendez's case, what we pointed out was the central lies that they have been telling for over 30 years that they've never accepted responsibility for. Namely, that they killed and murdered their parents in a mafia-style killing, shotgunning their dad through the back of the head, their mom at point-blank range after they reloaded, and then shooting them through the kneecaps. We said that they said during trial that the reason they did it was not for sexual abuse reasons, but because of self-defense, that they had an actual fear that they were going to be killed by their parents that night, and not just their father, but their mother. What we exposed through an 87-page filing, through over 2 hours of testimony before the judge, is that self-defense defense was a complete fabrication. They had a pre-planned alibi. They had bought shotguns under fake names days before in San Diego. And when they went ahead to kill their parents, it wasn't because they feared that their parents were going to kill them. It was for a whole variety of other reasons. Then they tried to suborn perjury and attempt to suborn perjury from their friends. They tried to get some girlfriends to say that the father had violently raped them, that the mother had tried to poison the family, that they had tried to buy a handgun the day before, all of which are complete lies. So what we laid out was a pathway for the Menendezes to truly come clean after 30 years. And we said explicitly that if they did come clean, it would show a huge hallmark of rehabilitation, which would then qualify them for, in essence, a resentencing. Because think about what a resentencing is. For over 30 years, the jury found first-degree murder and sentenced them to life without the possibility of parole. Now, 30 years later, they're trying to get out with having a sentence changed to life with the possibility of parole. For such an extraordinary result to happen, they have to show this full and complete acceptance of responsibility, which they 100% have not.
Okay, but DA, so you heard there from some of their family members just yesterday outside of court. They said what you brought to court yesterday re-traumatized them. What do you say to family members of them, their supporters, that they have been rehabilitated, that they no longer pose a threat to society if they were either resentenced or released? What do you say to that?
What I say to that is the same analysis that Governor Newsom of California used when he denied parole to Sirhan, the killer of Robert F. Kennedy back in 1968. Sirhan was 77 years old in diminishing health. He had been in prison for over 50 years. He had completely gone through the rehabilitation programs in prison like the Menendezes. He had gotten advanced education degrees like the Menendezes. He actually came at the lowest prison risk score possible in the risk score system. Yet the governor said that because Sirhan had not fully accepted responsibility for his actions, he didn't exhibit full insight into those actions, that he actually denied parole to Sirhan, which basically said that that factor outweighed these other factors. That's what I would say to the Menendez family. At the Menendez family, we have given the Menendez brothers a pathway to, for the first time in 30 years, finally come clean, show that they have truly been rehabilitated and no longer pose a risk to society. If they go through that pathway, we have said that we will reconsider our position on resentencing. But at this point, it is not ripe for resentencing. They have not been rehabilitated at this point, notwithstanding the very earnest and heartfelt arguments made by the Menendez family members.
D.A. Hochman, I will have to ask, though, have you personally met with Lyle and Erik Menendez? Have you sat down with them? Have you interviewed them? Has your office or those working with your office, have you?
In this process, the prosecutors don't actually speak directly to the Menendez brothers. We have literally spoken to everyone else, and we have read everything the Menendez brothers have put out there for the last 30 years, including Erik Menendez's interview in the 2024 Netflix documentary, where he maintains to that day, 30 years later, that he believed that the self-defense defense was the appropriate defense, notwithstanding the fact that defense is a complete fabrication.
You know, would your office prefer that down the line, the parole board just take this up, they offer a recommendation, and it can go into the lap of Governor Gavin Newsom? Would that be the preference of your office?
The only preference of our office was to give the judge all the facts and all the law so that the judge could make the appropriate decision for resentencing. What happened with the prior DA is he basically gave the judge half the facts. He didn't talk at all about what occurred in the crime and whether or not the Menendezes have ever changed their position in the last 30 years about all the lies they told during trial that the jury rejected. We went back in and with an 87-page filing reviewing over 50,000 pages of trial transcripts, we basically showed the judge how they had not completely accepted responsibility. That's our job, the facts and the law. Ultimately, the judge makes the call on whether or not he wants to grant this resentencing motion. Then if he does, the parole board makes a call on whether or not they want to grant parole. And finally, it all ends up on Governor Newsom's desk because he makes the final call on whether or not to reverse any grant of parole or affirm it.
So just lastly, too, you know there's a habeas petition out there as well to potentially grant them a new trial. Would your office be open to that? Getting them a new trial? No?
not at all, because the habeas petition has a very rigorous legal standard to, after 30 years, show that there's new evidence that came forward for the first time 30 years later that so changes the mix that you lost confidence in the verdict. Yeah. The two new pieces of evidence, as we again dissected it in an 85-page filing, don't even approach the legal standard to grant a new trial.
So what do you make, I'm just kind of curious, of the momentum behind this effort? You heard there from Mark Garagos, family members, the actors who portrayed them in the Netflix series, all attending this hearing yesterday. Their supporters, guitar in hand, singing. What do you make of that almost spectacle-like fascination with this case? Do you think in hindsight, your predecessor, D.A. Gascon at the time, made a grave error? Are they getting the hopes of these people up, and you're in the mix, and you're throwing cold water on it?
So I think that Gascon made a mistake, as we argued in court yesterday, in setting forth his own motion for resentencing, because he left about half the facts out for the judge to consider. The judge now has all those facts for a resentencing hearing. But as far as the passion behind focus on the Menendez case, I love the passion that people have to get involved in the criminal justice system. In fact, my office put out a video showing the entire procedural history called The Anatomy of the Menendez Case that you can find at da.lacounty.gov and actually go through and understand how we got to this point in the Menendez case. And I encourage people, don't just stop with the Menendez case. Please get involved and be interested in all the criminal justice cases out there. I think if the Menendez case serves a positive purpose, it will get people involved in the criminal justice system and make sure they understand what's going on.
All right, District Attorney there in Los Angeles, Nathan Hochman, thanks for joining us here on Live Now on your Saturday. We'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, in the meantime here, we're not done with this story. We're going to be bringing in legal analysis, Nima Romani, our friend, former federal prosecutor, to respond to D.A. Hochman there and what he had just told us. Stay tuned for that. We'll also be replaying for you the press conference held outside the courthouse yesterday in Van Nuys with criminal defense attorney Mark Garagos and family members of the Menendez brothers. All that and more in just 2 minutes.